Here we go again with Donald Trump and his whole slew of lies. All he does is lie over and over again.
CNN senior reporter Daniel Dale is with us now. Daniel, you are, of course, our fact checker as always, but sort of a bonus perspective in this moment is that you are as well Canadian.
Yes.
So I wonder what stood out to you from this meeting.
Well, I'll start as a fact checker. President Trump did not repeat a lot of the lies about Canada that I've been fact checking for months. I counted at least 11 false claims from the president about Canada in 2025. He told 2 of them by my count during this meeting, so better than usual, but it's worth fact checking those 2. So first of all, let's listen to a figure he used when talking about the U.S.-Canada trade relationship.
It's hard to justify subsidizing Canada to the tune of maybe $200 billion a year. It's not fair. But why are we subsidizing Canada $200 billion a year, or whatever the number might be?
So this 200 billion figure he uses to describe the trade deficit with Canada, and it's imaginary. The trade deficit with Canada is not even close to that high. It was about 36 billion, not 200 billion last year. Even if you only count goods trade, ignore the services trade, at which the U.S. excels, about 71 billion. So just wrong. I also want to listen to something he said about the importance of Canada to the U.S. As a trading partner.
We don't do much business with Canada from our standpoint. They do a lot of business with us. We're at like 4%.
So that 4% figure is wildly inaccurate again. About 17% of U.S. exports go to Canada. I can't definitively fact check this claim that we don't do much business with Canada, but Canada was the #1 buyer of U.S. exports in 2024, again through March this year, the #3 source of U.S. imports. So I think by any reasonable standard, Brianna, Canada is a major business partner, trading partner of the United States.
And as I mentioned, you are a Canadian. It's very interesting to see how Prime Minister Carney is approaching this, right? His opponent in this election was ousted from his parliamentary seat, and he's given him this olive branch to get back into parliament, right? He's very much trying to unify Canadians as he goes into this fight with Donald Trump. How are Canadians feeling about it?
So I think, I won't pretend my personal circle is wholly representative, but I think there's relief in Canada today that the Prime Minister didn't get Zelensky'd. We saw the social media post from President Trump minutes before this meeting. You thought, well, he might be kind of on the warpath here, might be setting up for an ambush. Instead, it was pretty conciliatory, even though he did repeat some of this 51st state rhetoric. He complimented the Prime Minister on the campaign in which the Prime Minister essentially ran against Donald Trump, so didn't have to compliment him on that. I also thought it was interesting how the Prime Minister decided to approach the President. It seemed pretty strategic. #1, flattery. Started calling him, you're a transformational president. You're here to, tighten the border and improve the economy. So kind of buttering him up. Then interjecting whenever he brought up the 51st state thing. That was a key part of the Prime Minister's campaign. He knows that for his own voters, he can't let that go. But then letting a bunch of other things go, not engaging in a constant back and forth that would get the president's back up and maybe cause an outburst.
He got a lot of compliments, too, from the president. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Daniel Dale, thank you so much. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger with us now to talk a little bit more about this meeting. What did you think about how it went, David?
Well, could have been a lot worse, right? It wasn't Zelensky, and it wasn't the 1830s when the U.S. and Canada had a terrible border dispute, and the Canadians, I think, ran one of our ships over Niagara Falls, and so could have been a lot worse. That said, it was pretty clear that these two men do not have a whole lot they're agreeing on, and have no interest in giving in to the other side. And I think that, President Trump probably had an expectation that Canada, China, others would fold much more quickly. And now he's trying to figure out what you do. As Daniel just said, it's 17% of our exports. That's not nothing. And of course, the supply chains are deeply integrated. There's one other thing that I think the president, if he didn't say it falsely, certainly exaggerated. He said, we don't need anything from Canada and we defend them. Well, the fact of the matter is they also defend us. Probably the most integrated defense system we have is defending the whole northern part of the continent. We do it in a completely interoperable way. There's really nothing like it anywhere else in the world. And I think relationships like that are being threatened here.
Yeah, listen, you go to any service academy in the US and a number of military installations, and you will find visiting members of the Canadian military. There is a lot of integration in training and even education. I also thought it was really interesting, and I wonder what you thought about this, David, of how Carney brought up during this Oval Office availability and also, before the visit, the head of state is King Charles, right? Who he now has coming to open Parliament in Canada at the end of the month, which is something that has not been done by the monarch in almost 50 years. We know how Donald Trump feels about the royal family. He has been flattered recently by an invitation from King Charles to go over to the UK for, to be hosted. That's not an accident that he's saying, hey, by the way, look who our dad is, or something akin to that.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing for Canadians because, of course, their own relationship with Britain and its long history is a little bit fraught there. But, to your larger point here, when you begin to turn on your allies, the allies begin to look at each other and they begin to look at new relationships. So what has the United States been trying to do with Europe, Canada, other major allies, Australia, New Zealand? They've been trying to get a common strategy versus China. And that's going to be really hard to do in a condition in which the president has made the tariffs be the dominant issue in our foreign relationships with each of these countries, even though we have a lot of other issues, not only with the Canadians, but certainly with China, certainly with Europe. And there are a lot of European leaders who are meeting right now in Washington, and I was with some of them this morning. And there's very much an attitude of, if the United States is going to create a vacuum here, we're going to have to find alternatives.
David Sanger, always great to speak with you. And what an interesting moment this is today in Washington to discuss. Thank you. Mark, what did you think of this meeting?
Well, a couple of things. One, I thought it was actually pretty cordial, given the fact the contentiousness that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. I thought Carney held his own in a way that was respectful to Trump. We didn't see a Zelensky situation because that would have been a nightmare. It's really what's going to happen behind closed doors right now. The difference between Zelensky and other world leaders and Carney is that Carney has been a banker in the UK, in Canada. He's worked for Goldman Sachs. The guy's a money man. So Trump looks, up to folks that he thinks is smart. And I do think that he has respect for Carney.
And is that where, Tim, where you think the majority of the respect comes from? I also thought it was interesting that as the 51st state conversation started to happen, there was just enough flattery, perhaps, on the part of Carney. He said, look, I know you're a real estate guy. I know you understand this. It's not for sale. Trying to use language, right, as the president had just talked about, that he knew the president would understand.
Yeah, I think it was clear that that question was going to come up, and he was really prepared. I also thought it was really notable when he said he'd spoken to the owners of Canada. I thought that was a really kind of an interesting way to put his constituents, the voters, the folks who did recently elect him as prime minister. They're the ones who told him on the campaign trail, he said, that Canada is not for sale. And look, the president said never say never, and then you heard Prime Minister Carney there once again say never, 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 over and over again.
Yeah, and Tim, he talked to the owners of Canada. He also has spoken to the head of state of Canada, right? You have Mark Carney, who has arranged to have King Charles come and help open Parliament later this month, which is something the monarch hasn't done in almost 50 years. Trump respects the king, right? He was flattered recently by getting an invite to the UK by the king. What did you think of him also saying, yeah, but Buckingham Palace isn't for sale, the Oval Office isn't for sale? That wasn't by accident.
No, it wasn't by accident. As I mean, this was the question that was going to come up. And I did think it was notable, too. He called him prime minister. In the past, he's called the heads of state of Canada, such as Justin Trudeau, for example, the former prime minister. He's called them governor. And, on social media. And there were some questions, too, going into the meeting, given the post that he did make on social media about this, that kind of set the table and set the
if Trump is not scheming and scamming again, as always, we don't know what to call this. The president that you guys elected is yet trying to scam another country. Are we surprised? No.